Attention carriers, brokers, and dispatchers. You're tuned into the eCarrierCheck channel, where we bring you the insider tips, tricks, and insights to drive your sales and logistics business to new heights. Each week, your hosts, Jared and Nate, sit down with the top professionals in the industry, diving deep into everything from prospecting and cold calling to maintaining carrier relationships and maximizing your bottom line. Learn real-world strategies, hear success stories, and get actionable advice you can implement in your business today. So buckle up and get ready for an entertaining and informative ride. This is the eCarrierCheck channel, your source for can't-miss logistics intelligence. Stay tuned.
Hey, good morning, Happy hump day. We're halfway through the week, man.
This is it.
Who's holding on? Is anyone about to just kind of call it quits? No? Good. But it's in this industry, these weeks sometimes either feel super long or like where the heck did time go?
Yeah.
Right? Depending on what you're working on. But, today we're going to talk about some updates in the industry.
Yeah.
We have plenty of updates. We've had many stories already this week, for only being Wednesday, of just from our subscribers.
Yeah.
And just from carriers and brokers themselves, just kind of what they're struggling with. We don't always get bad news. We get some good news, right?
Yeah.
Had a guy last week that moved the load. He's been cold calling nonstop, and that was super cool. So the difference is how hard are you willing to work?
Yeah. Yeah, and a little bit of luck. For that matter.
100%.
You know what I mean? Like you have the right conversation with the right guy at the right moment, or the right gal, whatever.
Yeah.
And you just happen to go, yeah, I need somebody to fill that need. You know what I mean? I tell you what, I love what's going on. How's it going? It's always good to see you, Chief Freight Hauler. Too deep into it, just quit. I agree.
Oh,
how are you, brother? It's good to see you. How's the week going with our favorite two low inspection carriers?
Jerome, what's up, brother?
Chief Freight Hauler said he was going to switch over to. Are you still doing nursery, or what are you up to? Tell us where you're at and what you're up to. Even with you, Jerome, I'd love to hear how the hazmat world's going. You know what I mean?
That's right. You got hazmat.
I freaking love that, man. That's insane.
That's a nice.
That's insane.
Okay. You're mentioning something about some luck. This industry has some luck into it.
A little bit, yeah. I think it's interesting. We were talking to a carrier, or actually a broker this week, that was talking about bidding. And they're a smaller broker. They're always in the bidding space. They run a few dedicated lanes, but for the most part, their business is spot market. And they're just throwing out bids to try to get freight against 20 other brokers, which is a little hectic, to be honest with you. But I wanted to talk about what they've been doing for their success, just in hopes to inspire, or at least to give other people ideas on, oh, that's how that works, or oh, that's a good idea. Maybe we should start doing that.
Right.
And I think what's interesting about their business, specifically, is that they are good at recognizing not only patterns with bidding, but patterns with carriers.
Okay.
So let's talk about the bidding side of it first.
Okay.
And then we'll talk about the side of it with carriers. Okay. And honestly, even like for the carriers that are watching today, you guys should probably be in that same function. Carriers are kind of unique. We'll talk about carriers in a second as well, because I have some thoughts on how carriers can recognize patterns, specifically to brokers that are posting loads.
Okay. Yeah.
Let's see. Chief Freight, I've been pulling a step deck the last couple of weeks doing a dedicated project.
Nice.
That's awesome. Off today because they have to move the crate. Okay.
Off today. What are you doing for your day off?
I wonder when's your birthday, brother? I love birthdays.
Yeah.
Like I'm a big birthday,
Really?
like give me some cake. I haven't done hazmat since last week. Not too much hazmat load in the south. All right, we'll keep looking. You know, honestly, Jerome, give us a call. Interesting enough, with eCarrierCheck, we can show you carriers within your little footprint, your network, that are doing hazmat loads today. So although you may not be seeing them on the boards or you may not be there, a couple calls could warrant some business for you.
To brokers?
To brokers,
Yeah, so you can
to
find those
brokers, to
brokers
carriers,
and
we can help you with that. So I just want to give you kind of that quick, even though you may not see it, it's still moving, I promise you, right? So a couple things back to this bidding concept, and I think bidding and giving pricing is so challenging. We just helped a brokerage last week with this huge bid. They were moving lumber to a huge project up in North Dakota, a little bit into Canada. And you're just kind of guessing, what are the rates going to do the next 3 months, 6 months, year? And how do you do that, right? How do you do that? Now there's some cool tools, right?
Yeah.
DAT has pricing tools, and Truck Stop has pricing tools. Green Screen, which I think was just bought by Triumph Capital, like that's a factoring. Who else would have pricing, right? Is those
Right.
that factoring companies always have pricing, right? But what they did, I thought, was probably more unique than what I've seen prior to them just using those tools. If you don't have access to those tools, where some of those tools are kind of expensive,
Oh, for sure.
right? Is, they start calling carriers and get kind of a quick pattern recognition of, okay, in this little group or 50-mile radius, I'm seeing 215 a mile. This pattern, I'm seeing 280 a mile. This one, I'm starting to see this. And then they started to kind of look at it from a spreadsheet and going, okay, here's a pattern I'm seeing going from north to south. Here's a pattern I'm seeing south to north, right? East to west, same thing, west to east. And they're starting to see directional patterns with their bidding, which I love, right? You're always going to see freight moving in the country east to west and vice versa. There's always going to be kind of this, it almost is like a heartbeat in our country, right? There's freight coming in from Canada, there's freight coming in from Mexico, and the ports sort of kind of compress it and go, right? And so I thought something that I thought was interesting with their bidding stuff, they're starting to do automation. Not so much AI stuff, but automation, where they're actually collecting rates and just measuring those rates against other people, right? So this is that day-to-day marketing or day-to-day bidding that they're doing, where they're like, hey, why don't we set up some automation? And all that automation is, to be completely blank, you're like, automation, what's that mean? They're putting it into a spreadsheet using just a basic program that they got from a programmer that can go, hey, if you're putting it in there, put it over here.
Right.
And they're just putting it over.
Yeah, because I was going to ask you, because that can be very time consuming, right? Especially if you're a really small brokerage,
Yeah.
right? You're trying to focus on A and B, but then you have this opportunity that
Right.
you're trying to just kind of gather information to make the best, decision.
Yeah.
Or bid. The
Yeah.
best bid. You want to have a good bid. So that can be, very time consuming.
Oh, Josh is on. Josh, what's up, brother? What's going on? Hear that with
Better than
discipline thought and discipline action, you'll have the company set up for both immediate and long-term success.
Yeah.
Exactly. Everything is pattern driven.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that they're starting to see that. Now, here's the patterns on the other end of it, right? When those guys are doing those bids, okay, they get on the boards, they post the loads, they're starting to see people that call in consistently. Now, instead of just taking a rate and being a pencil pusher, now what they're doing is going, well, hey, what lanes work for you? What kind of equipment you got? And then they put those people in some spreadsheets so that now all of a sudden we can start to see patterns. It's sort of almost alleviate getting to the board. The board is the chaotic part of our entire industry, right? Everything sort of spurs from there. I would even consider the spot market or load boards sort of like the black market.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's just chaos. There's fraudulent activity. There's double brokering going on in some particular ways. Actually, they're actually moving the loads and getting it done. It's just, they're just a little better at finding carriers that actually will move the freight than you. But some of the freight's getting stolen on there. There's some crazy shit going on the load boards. It's like this weird black market, right? It's the deep underground of the web, right? So recognizing those patterns of those carriers calling in and starting to build relationships, I think is wildly key, right? Especially as we go into summer, a little bit of capacity tightening. Trump is about to sign some China stuff that they came out with this morning. And I think you're going to start to see that uptick that I think people are hoping for. We're still sort of just kind of trudging along. I think you'll start to see that uptick come 3 to 6 months from now, right? Is our economy booming? No. Do we still probably end up losing more carriers and more brokers over the next 5 months? Yeah, absolutely. If you're not watching your margins, your cash flow, those things, they can just catch up with you and boom, thanks for playing, right? So
yeah, how do we, you said the patterns on the side of, you catching up on patterns of carriers calling in, what kind of questions can I ask these carriers, and what's it look like when I'm saving them, that way, I don't have to go post on the load board, right?
Yeah. I think a couple things, depending on, most shippers have patterns that they're putting out their freight from load boards. Either they have the same origins, right? Even like the multi-location companies. Let's say, for instance, I used to work with this, they were a regional HVAC company.
Okay.
Interesting company. They had a location in Dallas, they had a location in Arizona, they had a location in, right in Oregon. And then they had some location in like Chicago or sort of like, I think Dubuque or something, somewhere in between Illinois and Iowa. Oh shit. And what was interesting about them is that if the person that went and got that account set up would have taken 5 minutes to understand the distribution model, you're going to see the patterns within that model. Why do they have 6 warehouses? Well, those 6 warehouses, this warehouse covers these 9 states. There's a pattern, right? So now all of a sudden you're like, hey, wait a minute. Every time something ships out of Illinois, I need to have that guy from North Dakota that friggin' handles all the North Dakota freight, right? So inside of shippers, they have patterns themselves, whether it's a multi-location function or it's one location. Their clients are the same as you. They have a kind of an 80-20 rule, right? If they have all their freight coming out of Omaha and 12 loads go to Arkansas, most likely that's one of their larger accounts. And asking that question isn't a bad thing. Because I think it's important that you go and recognize the importance of each one of their accounts and what do they account for. Do you need to know that they're 30% of your business? No, but hey, I know every client's important. Tell me about this one. I see a lot of freight going into there. Why is that? And you're going to get some really interesting questions or answers back, right? So recognizing those patterns within the shipper, down to those carriers, and then into that pricing. There's 3 different layers there that you need to kind of work in. But eventually, if you kept a spreadsheet, if you did it old school, let's just get a friggin' piece of paper and a pencil and a Rolodex out. That's what we used to do it on. Not to date me. I don't want to talk about that. You've got those things, right? So watch those patterns at all 3 of those levels. Ask questions at all 3 of those levels. And you'll start to be able to develop that where you're like, oh shit, just call this guy. He does all of my friggin' North Dakota freight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the kind of the end game right there, right? And that's what's that's what's really nice with the eCarrierCheck is where if you are noticing patterns, well, maybe we start calling carriers off of eCarrierCheck and start asking those questions, right?
Yeah.
Then you can start picking up patterns that way instead of off the load board. But yeah, no, that's really good. I didn't think about it from the shipper pattern point of view, so I like that.
I think the other thing that I've noticed too, from another pattern perspective or even just distribution perspective, a couple weekends ago, there was a broker that called me, sort of full mainstream panic.
Yeah.
I need friggin' people. Nobody's calling. What do I do? And he started to get on our site, started blowing out emails, and really wasn't getting much of a response. He started texting, and I think he texted 12 people, and 10 of those people ended up responding. So he blew out 400 or 500 emails and got maybe 3 responses. So you can see the pattern there is that people want to be communicated with in a respectful way, obviously, first off, and genuine way, not like some blown out dumbass, I got 40 loads, so all this. Nobody wants that shit. People want to be respectfully approached, and then they'll treat you back the same way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that's really well put.
So watch your patterns that way so that you can understand communication patterns, bidding patterns, and even just supply chain patterns.
Right. Okay. Jerome, give me a call this afternoon, man. We can find some time to get you a list of brokers to call, or we can just kind of meet together. But yeah, give us a call this afternoon. Andy, the boards are like the dark web.
Dude, it's wild. I mean, it's like the Wild West, and you just kind of there's some good in it. There's still good in it. There's good in everything if you look for it, right? Show me your age when you speak of verbal index. I don't want to talk about it.
You can't see the gray hair.
I know.
These guys.
I'm just spinning that thing, going, wait a minute, I need to call that guy in Grand Junction.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it is right there. But
what about patterns when you're talking to like a salesman or saleswoman when they're trying to make cold calls? What kind of patterns can they be looking for?
This is a great question. I think when it comes to patterns, specifically when you're communicating, let's just dumb it down even further. We're not even talking about a sales call, right? And first off, let's look at the patterns when you're in person versus when it's over the phone, okay? If you're just trying to communicate with somebody over the phone, you have to listen to understand tone, right? Understand speed, understand the background noise. All those things all of a sudden become clickable in your mind going, they're busy, they're rushed, they don't want to hear you. How do I make a point quick, right? Or if they're going slow, I need to go slow, right? So recognizing those patterns within that communication. Now, here's some interesting stuff, and I love this. We get to do this in person. Every other podcast that I've ever seen in the transportation industry, nobody's sitting next to each other, which is phenomenal. Number one show in the entire logistics world. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. There's like 6 people watching. But when you're doing things in person, we're watching for eye contact. We're looking for people leaning. What's interesting is your legs are crossed toward me. That means you're open to the communication.
Yeah, that's
if you were sitting this way, it would put me off a little bit, right?
I would never do
that. Yeah, no, thank you. But those are some of those patterns when especially at Tiffany's. I'll tell you something that they taught me at Tiffany's, which was kind of wild, because I was the king of standing on one side of the frigging counter and trying to sell something to the other side of the counter.
Yeah. And
if you ever walked into a store, you'd always see me right next to where I could get out from behind the counter.
Okay.
And almost stand next to them. Mm-hmm. And I would slow my talking down. And I would look at them in the eye. And in some particular cases, I would actually I would make sure I shook their hands. Or I would slow down and say, what does this mean to you? Or what are we doing for this, right? And we'd start to understand each other's body language. And I would even start to replicate their breathing patterns because I was a sick fuck. That's about the only way of putting it.
I love it.
I'm sorry. I was really bad. I was really intentional with every single thing.
But it also made you as good at what you were doing.
I understood them better, right? Okay. And so if I can get people around their desk or stand beside their desk, that's what I'm going to do, right? Because that's what works. And right now, the number one way of reaching out to people in our industry is face-to-face sales calls. If you are anywhere in the United States and can walk into a manufacturer, you need to go do it right now. Print off a card, put on something nice, and walk into that building and get rejected and just learn from it.
Right. Yeah.
And hopefully get a meeting.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
100%. What about patterns when it comes to earlier you talked about the China agreements. We also got FEMA with Trump.
Oh man.
Wouldn't it be smart for people to start digging more into this type of news and then start reaching out to companies that, hey, this might affect them? Let me talk to these companies and be like, hey, this is what's going on. I'm sure you already know, but I'm also keeping myself updated, and I want to see if we can team up together, right?
Yeah.
So, talk about those kind of patterns where you're watching the industry with whether it's news and trending, what's trending. How do we use that to the best of our ability?
That's an interesting question. And in some particular cases, you can actually do something about it. In some particular cases, you just have to sit and watch, right? With China, with the Trump agreement going through and this China thing, you'll start to see box stores going kind of crazy for this Christmas. I'm sure if he gets a sign this week, who knows?
Right.
But it's one of those things where you start to put feelers in where those are going to make a difference at that retail level that's bringing freight in, right? The FEMA thing is wildly interesting. There are companies that do millions of dollars with FEMA. Millions of dollars, right? And when leadership comes in and says, no, this is what governors are for, Trump was like, I don't know why you'd have a governor if they're not controlling local resources. Like, what are we doing, right? If I'm a brokerage or a trucking company that works with FEMA, and Trump has already sort of said this, oh my gosh, you need to get in with the governor now. You know what I mean? Like, if you're that guy that's in Florida, you need to be calling the governor. You need to be getting into that office and say, hey, I know our state gets hit by an average of 12 disasters a year. here's the resources that I have at my disposal, and here's how I can help, because they're going to have to set up layers. I mean, there's thousands of people that worked for FEMA at the beginning of this year. Now there's not, right? And they'll just continue. But after this hurricane season, if he makes this decision, there's brokers that need to go to that top of the snake and start working their way down, especially locally. But, you know, obviously the pattern is Southeast, right? Pretty much the Gulf of America.
Tell them that.
Just kidding. I'm not. But if you know those governors in those states, you're going to be at the top of the list, right? Yeah. So Nebraska doesn't have very many disasters. We had a huge flood a couple years ago, 3-4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago. Yeah. Huge flood. It was ridiculous. It destroyed miles of farmland, turned it into a desert, right? If that was controlled by the government, you know how many people they're going to have at the local level to be able to handle the logistics of that? Yeah. They're going to need some help.
Oh, for sure.
They don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. It's not easy.
I mean, they sort of do.
This is gonna be shit keeping you up at night.
Governors can just declare a national emergency, but that's to release funds, which FEMA just releases funds. But then you're still going to logistically have to, you know, you need that friggin' hard-nosed sergeant,
right,
you know, barking orders sort of, right?
That knows what he's doing.
Yeah. That's what you end up doing. It's just becoming the head of logistics for each state. Yeah. That'd be insane.
Oh yeah.
So.
That's good stuff, man. You know, I don't know if you have any comments here, but
I didn't see any.
You know, another thing too, and I know we're gonna probably close up here in a second, but for those of you that are just still, you know, it's kind of struggling getting customers or a shipper, just keep calling. You know, two people that I encourage you to follow on LinkedIn. There's Bella. There's Gabe. Yep. Gabe hit me up when he first started his new position at his new place, and he has been hammering the phones daily. Bella's even hammering the phones, and they're posting. What I like about them is they're posting their goods and their stories. Their stories.
Their stories.
And
the journey.
And these people are they're professionals. I'm calling them professionals. They're really good at what they do, and you know, it is not an easy industry. So keep calling. You said there is some luck to this industry.
Yeah,
this game.
A little bit. Yeah.
The more you call, the luckier you get.
Absolutely.
Right? So it can be very draining. So it's important to take a step back, whether you're a carrier, dispatcher, broker. I don't care what you're doing. Take a step back, find some time to just kind of gather yourself together.
Yeah.
You know, and then get back to it.
Yeah.
It's important to take a step away and kind of get back to it. But you know, we still hear a lot of people struggling out there. So
Scott's on. Yeah, but calling is the key. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, you don't have a choice, right? Pick up the phone over emails. Yeah, emails are just ridiculous.
Oh gosh.
I don't see those working. Now I have to bid. What did he say? 50 states EMAs instead of one FEMA bid. Yeah. This is a real thing. Like, I mean, if it happens. Now this is what he said. If you look up FEMA Trump and governors on Google, and you'll see the article that I'm talking about. But it'll get very complex very quickly. You know what I mean? Luck favors the prepared. Man, that's a great quote right there. I love that. I love that Scott's on. Welcome on, brother. It's good to see you.
Yeah. So, Jared, any closing thoughts? We're halfway through the week. Give me some tips, thoughts, just, you know, advice to close out the week, especially for people watching today. Give us some entertainment, man. It's been a tough week for people that call in to me.
I know we do kind of hear some crazy war stories.
We do.
You know, I think, you know, for those people that call us and they're like, well, I should have started this project a year ago, 6 months ago, 6 weeks ago. You know, just start. Mm-hmm. Just start today, right? You know, and a lot of people do that same thing where they're like, well, we should have been collecting bids for a year. Yeah, you should have, but you didn't. So let's just start today. Let's just put one rate in. Let's put one carrier in. Let's do it old school. If you got some cool software, then do it through your software. Right? We run a software company, and I'm telling you to throw it in Excel. But you know, utilize something today. Start today and just be disciplined, because you know, even that guy earlier, Josh said, be disciplined is key, and it really is. That's all you can do. And make your calls. But if you have the chance to go make a call this week, let's put yourself in an uncomfortable position. Put on something a little bit nicer than what you're doing right now, because most people are in sweatpants, and just go see if you can make a call and see what happens. Learn from it.
I like that. Thank you, man. tune in Friday. We do have we kind of the next three Fridays.
Next 3 Fridays are big.
We have 3 incredible guests coming on for the next 3 weeks. So make sure you tune in each Friday. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and hit the bell because
hit the bell.
That way you don't miss out. I mean, these people that we're bringing on, they have so much value, just so much insight that you need to hear.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're struggling right now, you better tune in. That's all I'm saying, right? Whether or not, you just come and say hi.
Yeah,
so,
we always do.
So we'll see you guys Friday. Make sure to tune in.